A Tuesday morning in July 1984, a 32-year-old doctor named Barry Marshall asked his lab technician to scrape the contents of 2 petri dishes alive with spiral-shaped bacteria into a beaker of beef broth. He drank it quickly, like a shot. He hadn't told his boss, he hadn't told his wife, and he did it because no one would believe him, and he was running out of other options. In the 1980s, stomach ulcers were one of the most common serious diseases in the world. Millions of people were suffering from burning, gnawing pain. Many needed surgery. Some died. The entire medical establishment agreed on why. Stress, too much acid, triggered by modern life. The fix: antacids, diet changes, surgery in serious cases. Learn to relax. This was not a fringe theory. This was settled medicine, backed by decades of research, taught in every medical school, accepted by every gastroenterologist on the planet. And it was wrong. Completely, catastrophically wrong, and 2 Australian doctors had the data to prove it as early as 1982. In 1979, a pathologist named Robin Warren kept noticing something strange in stomach biopsies. Spiral-shaped bacteria living in the stomach lining. This was strange because everyone knew bacteria couldn't survive in stomach acid. The stomach was considered sterile, essentially self-sterilizing. Whatever Warren was seeing, it couldn't be important. Nobody cared. Until 1981, when a young trainee doctor named Barry Marshall asked Warren if he could collaborate on the project. Over the next year, Marshall and Warren studied 100 patients. The bacteria were present in virtually every single person with gastritis, duodenal ulcer, or gastric ulcer. The pattern was impossible to ignore unless you wanted to ignore it, which it turned out most of the medical world did. When Marshall presented their findings, the response was skepticism, and then hostility. Their paper was submitted to a major conference and rejected. Journal editors struggled to find reviewers who thought it was even worth publishing. Senior gastroenterologists told Marshall he was wasting his time. Some were openly mocking. The logic of the establishment was airtight. Ulcers had been studied for a century. If bacteria caused them, someone would have found it by now. The absence of prior discovery was treated as proof the idea was wrong. By 1984, Marshall had 2 years of solid data and zero acceptance. He needed to do something drastic. He needed a human trial, and he only had access to 1 willing subject. Marshall planned the experiment carefully. He had a sample from a patient with a stomach complaint, confirmed the bacteria were sensitive to antibiotics, and drank the mix. Then he waited. 3 days later, his mother said his breath was putrid. His wife agreed. Day 5, nausea and vomiting every morning. Day 10, he had an endoscopy. The tissue told the whole story. His stomach lining was now covered in H. pylori, surrounded by white blood cells. Flamed. Before the drink, his stomach had been clean. He took antibiotics. 2 weeks later, fully recovered. He had just infected himself, proved the bacteria was the cause, and cured himself. Proof of concept, start to finish. Even after the self-experiment, even after it was widely reported, many clinicians still weren't convinced. It wasn't until the early 1990s, nearly a decade later, that the evidence became impossible to ignore, and medical practice finally began to shift toward treating ulcers with antibiotics. Think about what that delay cost. Millions of people in the 1980s undergoing unnecessary surgery. Millions more on lifelong antacids that treated the symptoms while the bacteria quietly kept doing damage. Some developing stomach cancer because untreated H. pylori is now known to cause gastric cancer that a simple course of antibiotics could have prevented. In 2005, Barry Marshall and Robin Warren were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. The Nobel Committee's words: peptic ulcer disease is no longer a chronic, frequently disabling condition, but a disease that can be cured by a short regimen of antibiotics. It had taken 23 years from first discovery to Nobel Prize. During those 23 years, the world kept treating a bacterial infection as a stress disorder because that's what everyone already believed. Barry Marshall didn't have a prestigious institution behind him. He didn't have a powerful mentor lobbying for him. He had data, a beaker of bacteria, and the willingness to be the experiment. The question isn't why he did it. The question is, what else are we currently certain about that we're going to be very embarrassed about in 20 years? Subscribe. Next episode are the doctor who saved thousands of lives with 3 words and was sent to an asylum for it. If this story made you think twice, subscribe to the channel. It means more than you think, and it helps me keep telling stories like this.